Hi gang, look, I've built a spaceship. With so many games around at the moment that feature the claustrophobic environments of a Zone Mortalis or a boarding action, I thought it was about time I build a creepy, corroded, abandoned set of space corridors for myself. But I didn't use any of the current Games Workshop kits to do so. Instead, in this video, I'll show you how I built all of this out of a much older Games Workshop terrain kit, a pile of plasticard, and the quickest and messiest painting process I could think of. So, I've been playing a load of Porous Heresy recently, and our new armies are just getting to the sort of size where Zone Mortalis games set in confined spaceship corridors and underground bunkers, are within reach. And to add to that, Games Workshop have released Boarding Assaults, a new game type for 40k that uses spaceship tiles, and we've also been playing Necromunda, which has its own set of confined corridor terrain. And with all this going on, I was reminded of a project I'd meant to do ages ago, to build my own Zone Mortalis, but in a way that's much easier to pack down and store. Years ago, I got a good deal on this spaceship mat. It's an old spaceship corridor fat mat from Frontline Gaming and Table War. 4 foot square and divided into corridors and, I guess, room sections made up of 2-inch tiles, which is conveniently the same size tile used in all the Games Workshop Zone Mortalis products. I also picked up one of these, the old Imperial Sector terrain kit. This was the previous standard style of Imperial City terrain, originally released around the same time as Cities of Death. These buildings were made up of all these detailed wall and floor panels that were designed to be assembled into cool multi-story buildings. They were on sale for years, really versatile kits with various options for Imperial Administratum buildings or Mechanicus Manufactories, all of which were intercompatible. But one thing stood out to me at the time: the wall and floor panels are also around 2 inches wide. So, in theory, I could use them to build spaceship walls. And since my mat doesn't have the negative space for big, thick Zone Mortalis walls that the Necromunda boards have, I could build thinner walls that didn't eat up squares. Great idea, right? Well, it was so good, I then forgot all about it, and both the mat and the board went into the loft for a few years at this point. But now they're back. I've got them down, I've broken out the plasticard, and I'm ready to start. Let's build a spaceship. First, I get everything off the sprue, as well as all the 2-inch wall sections. There are also a lot of 2-inch floor tiles that are going to be my secret weapon to pad out this kit. I don't need floors, so these are going to be turned into extra walls. And then there are a load of extra bits. Flying buttresses, waist-high walls, lamps, ladders, and other random accessories you might find in an Imperial city. I start out by assembling the normal sections into 6, 8, or 10-inch lengths. That's the size of most of the rooms on the mat. And then I build out the floor sections to the same height, using 2 layers of 1mm plasticard glued together to stop them bending once they're painted. Once this is dry, I use strips of textured plasticard to add a kick plate and a strip of rivets to each one to give them a bit more detail. It took a while to assemble all of this, but once the individual walls were done, I started gluing them together, either as L shapes or U shapes. The L shapes are obviously much easier to store afterwards and allow me to make individual rooms with a specific size and flavour. And then the U shapes are the opposite. I can choose to leave more or less space between these to create either small rooms or like bigger loading bays. That's pretty much everything. I just did this lots and lots of times. Here's some of the rooms I created. There are some extra details here. I've carefully cut out some of the molded on doors with a sharp knife to make me extra entrance and exit points. And I've used the wall height sections to make portals that later on I can fill with removable doors. But most of the rooms follow the same pattern. 2 side walls made from floor tiles and plasticard, and 2 front and rear walls made from wall tiles and entrance and exit points. As tiles started to run low, I used up all the spare parts as best I could, assembling any big bits into barricades to create cover for all these long corridors. The flying buttresses I initially didn't know what to do with, but I hit on doubling them up to create these sort of portals and then gluing them together into a strip to make a sort of gothic looking fence, I guess. I also assembled some other gubbins I had laying around for scatter terrain, some MDF storage crates from TT Combat that I already had, and a set of Necromunda bulkhead doors, which I either built up with wall sections to make them the same height as the rest of the terrain, or just left as they are and used as the guides for these portals. And that's it. Apart from gluing on some lamps and some ladders, there's not a lot more detail. It took a couple of days, and in the end, there was enough to fill almost all the 4x4 board, and we played a test game of Zone Mortalis on it to just try it out. Right, on to painting. This was pretty simple. I think with terrain like this, you want to give it a bit of colour, a small amount of detail, and then just weather the hell out of it so it looks like it's more detailed than it actually is. I started by priming the whole set with Army Painter Silver Primer from a rattle can. I went through an entire can in about an hour. Once that was fully dry, I used masking tape to tape off the metallic areas, cutting around some details where necessary, and then hit the exposed wall sections and interiors with two strong colours. A teal spray from Plasticard that sort of matched the colour of the mat, and a skeleton bone spray from Army Painter to create some contrast from the other two colours. Once that was dry, I removed the masking tape and moved on to details, if you can really call it that. Basically, any skulls, statues, or other devotional stuff was painted with a single coat of Retributor armor straight from the pot, and that's all I could be bothered with. I then chopped up a couple of old transfer sheets, I think from a Baneblade, so that the numbers were really big, and applied some random markings and Imperial symbols to the exterior walls. Okay, so then I broke out the airbrush and quickly sprayed all the various lamps and lights pale blue, and then all the damaged edges and vents black to justify, I don't know, smoke damage or soot damage or something. Once they were dry, I then took them all outside and gave them a really random and incomplete spray with two sort of weathering colours. A can of Model Mates Oil Brown dye and another can of Army Painter Fur Brown. I only did really little short bursts, so sometimes I got splatters all over the model, which was perfect to give them a bit of variation. This Model Mates dye is really nice. It's actually just an old brand name for Dirty Down, who make all sorts of weathering dyes for TV and theatre. Nowadays you can get them as 400ml spray cans or as smaller little pots for people like us. Finally, once all that was dry, I mixed up a wash using these big tubs of Vallejo Lavado dipping solutions. Equal parts black and brown, and then thinned 50-50 with tap water, and then just liberally threw them all over the whole terrain set. It took about 2 days to fully dry after this, but the end result looks suitably mucky, and the wash really just pulls all the colours together. They're not the most detailed thing in the world, but hey, it's a dirty, damaged, rusty spaceship, and I kind of want it to recede into the background so the models stand out against it. That's kind of the point of terrain. So there we go. I now have a board I can use for Horus Heresy Zone Mortalis games, Necromunda games, or 40k boarding actions. It's made from one Imperial Sector box, plus a few additional spare parts I had lying around, and about 10 A4 sheets of plasticard. The rooms can be configured into claustrophobic corridors or wide open landing bays, depending on the game. I can block corridors with boxes and crates. I added some shipping containers at some point here. Or I can leave big open access routes depending on what sort of game I want. And the best bit is that the whole set packs down into a handy little storage tub. Of course, with fantastic new Kill Team terrain and Zone Mortalis plastic kits out there, I'm not sure this is particularly useful to anyone, but if you've got some old terrain sitting around, well, maybe you can find another use for it as a spaceship board. Remember, Kill Team boards are much smaller than my 4x4s, and if, like many people, you're dreading painting a whole set of terrain, then remember, just lean heavily on the dirt and weathering, and don't worry too much about it. It's only a background to your models anyway. Thanks for watching. And if you'd like more videos about 40k, including occasionally some modelling ones, then please click on one of the videos just popping up to your right, then like, subscribe, and if you'd like to support the channel, there's a link to the Patreon in the thing below.